Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios here on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Connor is here today. Hello, Connor.
What's up, Jared?
Connor, I saw your tweet. The Vols in Evansville, first pitch is in like 25 seconds. I saw your tweet. You think something bad's going to happen to the Vols?
Well, it was more a shot at my friend because he's kind of a curse to his respective franchise. But, I mean, I could see it, to be honest with you.
Really?
Yeah, I mean.
I heard Nick Frazier in the last segment. He's taking Evansville outright. Aren't they like the worst team in the tournament?
Yeah, but postseason baseball is weird like that. Like,
it is for Cocta.
If you get hot at the right time, chances are you could probably win.
All right, put Connor on record.
Guarantee.
Oh, that is a way to start Fireball Hot Take Friday. So I want to start on this, which is the LA Rams have done a fantastic job of allowing access when it comes to their draft process. Jordan Rodriguez of The Athletic did like almost a year-long piece into how the Rams build their draft board. It was incredibly impressive. And it was basically like, hey, the Rams are going to let you in. You can't say anything until it's time for you to say something. But, here's kind of the way that we do things, and here's the players we like. And so after the draft's over, then you can post that story and tell everybody what we thought at the time. It's incredibly insightful. So they released a new video of their war room. And it's about how much, the video is about 4 minutes in total, but the video is about how much they wanted Braden Fisk, the defensive tackle out of Florida State. They wanted Braden Fisk to pair with Jared Verse, who they took the first night of the draft. Once they took Jared Verse in the first round out of Florida State, they said, we need to make sure we get Braden Fisk in the second round because the two of them together equal what we think our replacement for Aaron Donald's going to be. Now, we already knew that because we already read it, but in this video, it literally shows the Rams trying to get to a point to where they can get Braden Fisk. Now, all of these videos that these teams put out, they pretty much always take out anything that has to do with other teams. There may be a reaction to a pick, like they'll see a pick and say, oh, wow, they took so-and-so. But for the most part, you won't ever see them on the phone and know which team it is or what they'll say or what have you. So Les Snead, who ended up trading, I think it was like in the last 10 years, the biggest day two trade in the last 10 years in the NFL. The deal in which they sent 52 in the second round, 52, 155, and next year's second to Carolina for 39, one pick behind you, in order to take Braden Fisk. It shows the Rams trying to get up in order to make that kind of trade. Now, we talked about how the Rams made it known in that Athletic article that they wanted Braden Fisk, that it wasn't about the run on DTs. It wasn't that they wanted a DT. They wanted to make sure they got one of the DTs. It was they wanted to make sure they got that DT. So they were not interested in T'Vondre Sweat. But I could see the Titans, okay, run on DTs and they're coming up, whatever. And people have defended the Titans saying, well, when the Titans took the third DT in the second round, that's when the Rams said we had to get up. Except the video shows us, I think, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Tennessee turned down that massive package in order to draft that massive defensive tackle in T'Vondre Sweat. Here is Les Snead on the phone in the Rams War Room video talking to an unidentified team and then relaying the conversation to Sean McVay.
Hey, we're at 52. Would you do a future two to come back to 52?
He'll call you back.
Yeah, that's too far. They don't want to come that far.
Okay. So that was just a little snippet right there. Hey, would you do next year's too? Come on back down 52. We'll get the deal in there. And what did he say to McVay? He said they don't want to drop that far down. Line that up with Brian Callahan's comments right after the Titans made the T'Vondre Sweat pick.
Some of these calls and some of these trades, you're dropping down a significant level of player when you start dropping deep into the second, and sometimes the reciprocal value isn't there because everyone thinks that they can try to pull one over and get a deal, and that's not how it works. So there's a cost of doing business, and when you want to come up that high, There's things that are required, and some teams meet it, some teams don't. But I think there was just a world of player that we weren't quite ready to dip out of.
Sounds a lot like what he told Sean McVay, right? Yeah, they're just not willing to go all the way down to 52. And there's Brian Callahan saying there's a different kind of player when you go later into the second round. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So it does sound like the Titans turned down the package beyond a reasonable doubt that Carolina at 39 took. Connor, you're going to be the jury on this one. Do you believe the Titans turned down the Carolina trade?
No.
Really? Why?
I feel like I do think they reached for Sweat, absolutely. But I feel like they liked the position they were in to get Sweat. He wasn't going to drop. He was probably going to drop further down if they didn't.
I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you, do you think that the Rams, like in that Sean McVay cut, do you think Les Snead, do you think Les Snead was talking to the Titans when he said, no, they say they're not willing to go that far?
Oh, yeah.
I think it is dead obvious. I think it is dead obvious. Now, the point Connor's making is you can't drop the 52 and get T'Vondre Sweat, which I think you probably could, but that's a different discussion. So here's the real question. Did the Titans turn down that deal in order to take T'Vondre Sweat? The jury says yes. And was it a good idea in order to turn down a future second-round pick and a fifth-round pick? Not that I care about the fifth-round pick, but you guys are the ones that were like, oh, Jared, we had to get those picks. Down those two players, next year's second, 155, in order to take T'Vondre Sweat. And all I can give you is my opinion. And my opinion for this is T'Vondre Sweat better be all that and a bag of chips. He better not be on the sidelines because he's been eating too many chips. He better be a three-down player. He better get to the quarterback. He better help Jeffrey Simmons become a better defensive tackle. He better be in shape. He better play right away. And he better be an impact player. Because when you take a guy at 38, you are trying to take a high-level, game-changing player. And in this case, the Titans were given an opportunity to buy what I call sweat insurance. This pick for this administration, I'm not going after Rand on this one, because Brian Callahan's a part of this and Chad Brinker's a part of this. So it's all of them. But to me, their credibility is on the line in the form of T'Vondre Sweat. You guys get mad at Isaiah Wilson. But Isaiah Wilson was just a bust in which they misread the personality. The Titans didn't trade, at least to our knowledge, didn't accept, turn down in order to take Isaiah Wilson, a future first-round draft choice. This is like Traylon Burks. It's like if you trade A.J. Brown for this guy, you better be certain, or else you blew it. Because that Carolina offer was a haul. And it would have been perfect if you wanted to take T'Vondre Sweat. Again, Sweat insurance. The deal that Carolina made with the Rams, and again, this is the one that I believe that Les Snead was conveying to Sean McVay, that he tried to make with the Titans, had a point value of 579, which is equal to the 33rd pick. So that is higher value than the 38th pick. But again, for me, this was more about T'Vondre Sweat insurance. All the draft gurus say that Sweat would have been available later. And again, that's totally debatable. Connor seems to not think he would have been. I probably do. But for me, the second rounder next year would have justified taking Sweat if you did, and allowing you to say, hey, we know he's got some red flags. We know that the weight could be an issue. We know he just got a DWI. We know there could be problems, but we also got a second rounder next year. So not only do we get a player that we think has incredible upside, but we've also protected ourselves in case this doesn't work, that next year we'll go into the draft with 2 second-round picks. But they didn't do it. And again, you guys love the 5th-round picks because they must have thought that T'Vondre Sweat was that good of a player. And they must have thought in their visit down to Texas with mom and grandma and dad and everybody else, they must have thought that these red flags really don't matter. They must have thought, hey, we'll get that weight down. They must have thought he won't go partying. He won't go drinking. He won't drink and drive. And the reality of the NFL draft and making these kind of big transactions, the ones where everybody knew that you had a second alternative, I mean, you're putting your career on the line for that. And I do like the player T'Vondre Sweat because I've said I love big fat guys that can move. I don't love the big fat guys that can't move, but they are useful on the defensive line to stuff the run. But again, DJ Reader's a $7 million player. You're not hoping to take a $7 million player with the 38th pick. You're hoping to take a $70 million player with the 38th pick. And so you could, if he's a run stuffer, that's not good enough. The Titans convinced themselves they had to have T'Vondre Sweat. And I truly don't think that they thought when the Rams called that, you know, if we don't get this guy and we draft somebody else instead, but we pick up the extra pick next year and the extra 5th-round pick, our roster will be better. Because what I've learned about the Titans under this administration is once they get an idea on something, they're going to do it. No matter what happens in between the initial idea of, oh, this would be a good idea, and then them actually doing it. They wanted Kevin Byard off the team. They got it. Wasn't exactly how they wanted it, but they got it done. They didn't want a team with Derrick Henry on it. And they made that happen. They wanted L'Jarius Sneed. And even though Minnesota wanted L'Jarius Sneed reportedly and said, nah, they said, oh, well, we'll do it. And now there's T'Vondre Sweat, where it seems like it is more likely than not, beyond in my opinion, a reasonable doubt, that the Titans got offered that package and turned it down. That the Titans could have the Rams' 2nd-round pick and an extra player from the 5th round on their team today. And all they would have done is risk taking a guy that all the draft gurus, not one draft guru, not, well, Mel Kiper says he was this, but everybody, all the draft gurus said probably would have been available in the 3rd round. So instead of saying that the Titans were so dumb for not taking that package, though I would have taken the package. Especially if I wanted a risky player in Sweat. If I wanted the other guy, Fisk, who is, I think, I'm not going to say like a sure thing because none of these guys are sure things. But if I wanted a guy like Fisk, a productive player without the red flags, fine. But you took a guy that has multiple red flags. Give yourself a little insurance. They're giving you the opportunity to justify doing this. And the Titans said, nope, we got to have this guy. Well, the guy they got to have, the guy that I think we probably should be a little nervous about before he even signed, has missed 5 practices in the last 2 weeks. He's practiced 1 time in the NFL, and he got hurt. So, again, they had the opportunity to get Sweat insurance. They said, no, this is our guy. And now he's already missing practice. 615-737-1025 is the story. 615-737-1025. The moral of the story is this. T'Vondre Sweat better be that dude. And if he's not, we'll never forget it. 615-737-1025. Now there's the talk about the run on DTs. Because that's what the Titans said. Hey, we knew there was a run on DTs coming. Remember, the Titans had the most accurate draft board in the world, and they knew Michael Penix was going to the Falcons. So, they saw the run on DTs coming. That's why we had to take Sweat. We couldn't trade. But is that actually true? now that we know how the rest of the board played out. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company on a Fireball Hot Take Friday, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Made in the first 10, 12 picks of the second round. How much action were you getting? How much consideration did you give?
Tons of calls. We up until when we walked up here at 4 o'clock with JC, we had about 8-9 calls, 8-9 offers for the pick, and we were fielding the calls, listening. But one thing we talked about was let's see how this board shakes out. We knew there was going to be an early run on receivers, and we knew that with the defensive tackles that were right there, it was only a matter of time of when that run happened, and you knew that there was going to be a run on the corners right there. And so the receiver run happened early, like we thought, and then as soon as I think it was Washington traded into the pick and took Johnny Newton, we knew that run was going to happen, and it's just the way the board took shape.
Ran on draft night saying, we knew there was going to be a run on DTs, so we couldn't trade this pick if we wanted to get one of these great DTs. Sounds good, right? And there was a run. Now, it actually started the pick before Johnny Newton. It started at 35 when Atlanta took Rook Aurora Hore, whatever. This guy's name is not Aurora Hore, is it? Aurora Ho? Whatever. That might be worse. Anywho, he went 35. Johnny Newton went 36, and then you at 38 took T'Vondre Sweat. And then, obviously, the Rams traded to 39 with that massive package to Carolina in order to get Braden Fisk. So, yes, there's the run on DTs. See, we could not have traded down, Jared. We could not have traded down to get the DT. Except that there were more second-round DTs. Mason Smith to Jacksonville at 45. Chris Jenkins from Michigan, whose dad was a bad boy and who's pretty good himself at Michigan, Chris Jenkins. Chris Jenkins went 49th to Cincinnati. And then this one's important. Michael Hull Jr. at Ohio State went at 53 because the Rams pick was at 52. So again, the deal from the Rams, 52, next year's second, and 155 in order to get up with Carolina at 39. We played the cuts. It sounds exactly like they called the Titans and offered the same deal, and it would make sense that they would call the Titans and offer the same deal because the Titans had a better pick than Carolina. So there were other DTs that the Titans could have taken. Granted, one other second-round DT, that Michael Hall Jr., and I don't know how the Titans board, again, the most accurate board that Rand Carthon has ever been a part of, according to him, I don't know how the Titans board ranked these guys. But I went back and I looked at Dane Brugler's big board of the DTs, trying to get a vibe on this, and he's got T'Vondre Sweat as a fourth-round pick. So it's like, okay, we'll throw that one out because, that would be a terrible pick. With T'Vondre Sweat with a fourth-round grade. And all these guys have higher grades, according to Dane Brugler, than T'Vondre Sweat. But again, not only when you move down to 52, or do you have the ability to take the DT that went at 53, but you could also do what Carolina did. Carolina, having the 52nd pick, traded back up to get the running back they wanted at 46, which again would have allowed you to take Chris Jenkins, who I know is a very good player. Like, I know Chris Jenkins is a good DT. And in this case, you trade back up, but you still keep the second rounder from the Rams next year. So here's the choice the Titans made. By the way, the Carolina trade was 52 plus 142 in the fifth, plus 155 in the fifth for 46, which the value of the 46th pick has a value of 440. And the trade value from Carolina was a 444. So that's a fair trade. What that means is Indy, who was sitting there and made that deal, they ended up taking A.D. Mitchell. They had A.D. Mitchell a little bit further down the board. Again, another guy with red flags that they wanted, but they said, you know what, let's move down a little bit so we can take A.D. Mitchell, which is what you probably should have done when it came to T'Vondre Sweat and say, well, he's a guy we really want. He's got red flags, but let's move down the board. So here's the choice the Titans made. T'Vondre Sweat over the pick that ended up being Michael Hall Jr. plus 155 in the Rams second. So you could have had Michael Hall Jr. from Ohio State, defensive tackle, 155 in the fifth round in the Rams second next year. Or you could have made, again, a similar trade to Carolina to move back up to 46 and take Chris Jenkins, and that would have cost you your fifth rounder, which was Jarvis Brownlee Jr., Sweat, and Jarvis Brownlee over Chris Jenkins and the Rams second next year. Well, if you're in a rebuild, which the Titans, everybody tells me the Titans are in, if you're in a rebuild, that second round pick next year could be massive. By the way, we've talked about T. Higgins. If you had that second round pick next year, what if it was, okay, instead of T'Vondre Sweat, you end up getting, instead of T'Vondre Sweat and Jarvis Brownlee, who Gabe Judy Lawler is ahead of, and he was an undrafted free agent right now. Instead of Jarvis Brownlee Jr., you get Chris Jenkins and T. Higgins. Now what? So, I mean, again, you guys make the call on this. They made the call to say, nah, we want T'Vondre Sweat. And what that means to me is that the Titans specifically targeted Sweat. that they circled him and said, that's our guy. And I've always said this when it comes to free agency. In free agency, if there are 6 wide receivers and you just want one of the 6, you can pay market or even wait and pay below market for number 5 or number 6. But if there are 6 receivers that are out there and you want one specific guy of the 6, you have to overpay that guy. Next year, the free agent market for wide receivers for veteran guys, forget about the top guys, but the veteran guys, it's going to be DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, those kind of guys. If you want one of those guys, Deontay Johnson, if you just want one receiver, you can probably wait till day 4 of free agency, and then when somebody's still standing there and their asking price was $16 million a year, you can say, I'll give you 13, 14, and they might take it. But if you want DeAndre Hopkins and you can't have anybody but DeAndre, then you have to pay more to make sure you get DeAndre. That's the choice the Titans made with Devondre Sweat. And so all of their actions say that they clearly wanted Sweat, the same way the Rams wanted Fisk. And so because of that, again, this is where I say, like, you better be right. Like, there are concerns. It is a bad sign that you drafted this guy and he made it through one practice and is now hurt. That is a bad sign. So again, I'm a Titan fan, and when they made the pick for Sweat, I'm like, hey, man, I like guys that are productive in college. He was productive in college. I like big guys on the lines. I love my offensive lineman fat. And if you can get me a fat guy on the D-line that can move like Warren Sapp, I'm here for it. And he's got feet. Like, he's got feet. Even at that big old butt, he's got feet. But the number one ability in the NFL is availability. And between the off-the-field stuff, the partying, the DWI, all that, between the off-the-field stuff and the weight, he's already hurt. You know, we have to weigh how available can this guy be for the Titans. And then it's like, you know, how would you feel if they had ended up taking him? Like, let's say all the draft gurus were right and he was there at 52. And so you move down, get the guy you want, and you can trade that pick for T. Higgins. Or you get 2 2s next year. Then what? 615-737-1025. Let's go to your phones. 615-737-1025. And I know you guys will tell me not to worry about Devondre Sweat's injury. I know. That's not how this works. Being overweight is a risk for injury. Being out of shape is a risk for injury. I want to get to that next because I found an excerpt from a book that tells you, like, hey, this is how important this kind of stuff is. We'll do that next. By the way, Connor, Evansville, 2-run bomb in the second inning. It's Evansville 2, Tennessee 1. And maybe your guarantee of Evansville clearing the Super Regional and getting to the World Series, maybe that will come to fruition.
Hey, now, Fireball's cooling off a little bit.
There you go. Fireball Hot Take Friday, 615-737-1025. We'll continue next along with your phones here on Stillman and Company on what is a Fireball Hot Take Friday. The Fans are on 94.9 The Fan today against the Bats right here at First Horizon Park. Pregame 6:20, first pitch 6:35. Sounds Baseball on The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks, Family Leisure, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning.
Devondre Sweat, I think, surprised people in the second round. I really do. I think it surprised a lot of people because a lot of people thought he was ticketed more towards the third round. A lot of people think he might just be a 2-down defensive tackle. Weight, can he hold that weight and maybe slim it down a little bit so he can stay on the field? He had some issues along the way. You mentioned issue going into the draft. Tennessee actually had him in the day after the issue happened, the DUI, and then took a contingent of people to his hometown to talk with a lot of people, to make sure him, spend time with him, family. They believed in what they were getting, signed him. Plus the mantra of being more physical, more tough, tougher than they had been. Not that they weren't under Mike Vrabel, because that was his mantra too, but that mantra continues here. And he fit what they were looking for. And you mentioned it, being better and stronger on the offensive and defensive lines.
That was Charles Davis on SiriusXM NFL Radio. I love the idea that, hey, you know what? This Titans team, they want to be tough. Everybody wants to be tough. Have you ever met a team that didn't want to be tough? But again, the Rams video showed them on the phone offering the trade. Can we get the two cuts again, Connor, from the first segment? The Rams on the phone with Les Snead on the draft. This is Les Snead, again, the Rams general manager, working the phones on draft night, day 2 from the Rams draft house or whatever, and relaying the conversation to Sean McVay.
Hey, we're at 52. Would you do a future 2 to come back to 52?
He'll call you back.
Yeah, that's too far. They don't want to come that far.
And then Brian Callahan, the night after they picked Sweat, said this.
Some of these calls and some of these trades, you're dropping down a significant level of player when you start dropping deep into the second. And sometimes the reciprocal value isn't there because everyone thinks that they can try to pull one over and get a deal, and that's not how it works. So there's a cost of doing business, and when you want to come up that high, there's things that are required, and some teams meet it, some teams don't. But I think there was just a world of player that we weren't quite ready to dip out of.
Do not tell us that don't try to pull us on that one, offering the value of the 33rd pick in order to get the 38th pick so we can take a guy that has multiple red flags. I mean, even Charles Davis, who is Connor, we've played some Charles cuts. I love Charles, but Charles has been pumping some sunshine. Take that as a yes.
Yeah.
There you go. So, even Charles is like, I think there were a lot of people that were surprised about that pick. So, Devondre Sweat's hurt, and he's missed the 5 open practices that have happened so far. Now, there was a video of him practicing the first day, but ever since then, he's been out. He was out for the 3 open OTAs. No, the 2 open OTAs and the 3 open mini camps. They'll have an open OTA next week. Brian Callahan said he may be back. And I am concerned about his injury, and a lot of people, Jared, don't be concerned. J.C. Latham said yesterday that he is not going to rush back from an injury, Jared, so don't be concerned. And I'm not saying that Devondre Sweat should rush himself back from an injury. I'm saying that he's already injured is the concern. He made it through 1 practice. 1. It's crazy. And there are 2 reasons why overweight players are a concern. Number 1, they get hurt. And number 2, they can't run or play as much, which seems pretty simple. And I know people say, Jared, you're one to talk, and I don't play in the NFL. There's a difference. And so I keep talking about how important this stuff is to these guys about, hey, let's make sure you're in shape. It is important that you are in shape. And so I read the book about the Lakers. It was Jeff Pearlman's book, 3 Ring Circus. It was kind of the behind the scenes of Kobe, Shaq, Phil. And I was reading it, and when Shaquille O'Neal was with the Lakers and they hired Phil Jackson, he was so excited to get Michael Jordan's coach that he flew all the way out to Montana to go meet Phil Jackson. This is when Phil met Shaq. Quote, Jackson looked over the 350-pound Goliath standing before him. Frustrated by one lost season after another, O'Neal spent the summer lifting weights, watching what he ate, and ingesting creatine and other supplements. I was huge, Shaq said. Solid bulk. How much do you weigh? Asked Jackson. I don't know, O'Neal replied. Quote, I want you to lose about 15 pounds, Jackson said. Phil doesn't even know how big he is. And Phil's like, go lose 15. Jackson said, the bigger you are, the harder it's going to be on your knees, and I want you playing 40 minutes a game. That's why he wants Shaq in better shape. Again, he doesn't even know how much Shaq weighs at this point. Go lose 15. The weight matters. Like, I know that we talk about it like, oh, yeah, Jared, you don't understand. Yeah, I'm telling you, that matters. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Kyle texts into the show and says, we're going to be mad if Sweat does not work out. 2 number 2s next year would have been exactly what the doctor ordered. So let me say this when it comes to the idea of having the 2 number 2s. I keep harping back on this. I don't know how good the Rams are going to be next year. I know they made the playoffs this year, but this is the NFL. The Rams won the Super Bowl a couple years ago and were awful the next year and had to give that pick to the Lions because it was part of the Stafford trade. Like, that could have been a huge pick. And I believe that was the 6th pick that they traded back, got more assets, and then drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. So we have no idea how good the Rams could be. That second rounder from the Rams, that could be 32 next year or 33 next year. Probably won't be, but it could be. I mean, there is a real value in that pick from the Rams. And then I go back to T. Higgins. And I have told you, I could be wrong about this, but I think if you called the Bengals today, especially after the Jefferson contract, if you picked up the phone and you called Cincinnati today and you offered your 1st-round pick next year or you offered your 2nd-round pick next year, they would ship T. Higgins as fast as they could. And I bet T. Higgins would be okay with it because if you're going to trade for T. Higgins, you're probably going to have to give T. Higgins a contract. And you're going to pay him about $28 million a year, which is his value if Nico Collins is 24. Well, right now, I would not trade my 2nd-round pick in this year's draft in order to get T. Higgins because I want my 2nd-round pick in next year's draft. But if you had the Rams' 2nd-round pick in next year's draft, you could trade that for T. Higgins. So, again, I agree with Kyle. Those 2 seconds next year, the only reason you got Derrick Henry, Joe wrote an excellent article at The Athletic about Derrick Henry right before Derrick Henry's last game. The only reason the Titans got Derrick Henry, John Robinson did not want Derrick Henry, and Mike Mularkey did not want Derrick Henry based on how their football team was built. But they had 3 second-round picks because of the trade with the Rams that moved out from number 1. They drafted Kevin Dodd. Bust. They drafted Austin Johnson. And Austin Johnson was a DT 2-down player that never got after the quarterback. Austin Johnson is a fine NFL player. But he's not really what you want in the 2nd round. You want impact players in the 2nd round. And the 3rd pick, Blake Bedingfield, who was the director of college scouting, who they later fired after this. Blake Bedingfield was the one banging the table for Derrick Henry, and because they had a 3rd, 2nd-round pick, they said, okay, let's do it. I mean, the more rolls of the dice you get, the better chance you have of getting a Derrick Henry. And I'm not saying that means that you're going to get the next Derrick Henry because you get the Rams 2nd-round pick next year. I'm just saying it doesn't hurt. So, yes, I would have wanted that. Kevin in Nashville says, what if the Titans really wanted Braden Fisk? Talking about the 38th pick. I guess that's kind of like an, if and but kind of conversation because they clearly didn't really want Braden Fisk. They wanted Devondre Sweater. They would have drafted Braden Fisk. So, again, the trade that the Rams made had the value of the 33rd pick. That's the value. According to the trade chart, it's the value of the 33rd pick. If you think that Devondre Sweat is the 20th best player, then you take the player. Like Caleb Williams was at number 1. You could have offered Chicago 3 number 1 draft choices. They would not have traded that pick. And I would have understood not trading that pick. But when it comes to the Sweat thing, I mean, with the red flags, I don't see how you could turn that trade down. With Fisk has the production in college and none of the issues that Devondre Sweat has. But again, that's kind of an if and but conversation because they didn't want him. As far as I'm concerned. They clearly didn't want him the way they wanted Sweat. Texter says the Rams traded that much because they wanted to pair the Florida State teammates together, and Carolina wanted Fisk themselves to pair with Derek Brown. Again, that sounds great. The idea that the Titans did not turn down the Rams' offer, but we played the cut, and exactly what what Les Snead said to Sean McVay is exactly what Brian Callahan said at the podium later that night. So if you're saying, well, the Rams only made that trade because Carolina wanted Braden Fisk, they wouldn't have made the trade with you. It seems, my opinion and Connor's, that beyond a reasonable doubt, they offered you the same package, and you turned it down because you wanted Devondre Sweat. So don't give me the Titans couldn't have made that trade. I mean, you can't say that. 615-737-1025. Back to your phones on this on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. 615-737-1025. Let me tell you what is not a hot take. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Why? Because Hiller gets the job done every time. There is no such thing in the draft as a sure thing. There is such thing when you call Hiller. I've been using Hiller at my home for 6 years now. They are the best. And let's face it, things often aren't as simple as they should be when it comes to taking care of your home. And this summer, Hiller is making it simple. With real-time technician tracking, you'll know exactly when they're on their way, and you can trust that you have the best and brightest techs in your home fixing your problems on their first trip out. From now until June 30th, enjoy a free service call with Work Perform or take $25 off any plumbing or electrical repair. It's that simple. Visit happyhiller.com today for details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
Yeah, when you're picking in the second round at 38, which is at the top of the second round, usually, the question is, can this guy be a 3-down player or not? And if he's a 2-down player, then he more likely you may get an opportunity to take a swing at him later, or maybe consider trading back and still getting him to get just some more draft capital.
Would you have taken him this high?
No.
Just on-field productivity only, would you have taken him this high?
No.
Rick Spielman, former NFL general manager, the same guy that drafted Justin Jefferson that just signed for $35 million a year, saying yeah, you don't take a guy like Devondre Sweat this high in the draft. Would you have taken him even if he didn't have the red flags? No. And what was the last thing Spielman said at the end of that first cut? He goes, you probably try to move down so you can get some more draft capital. And if you get that second-round pick that the Rams gave Carolina, one pick behind you, again, it sounds from the Rams draft war room video, and I think this is beyond a reasonable doubt that the Rams offered the Titans that package and the Titans turned it down in order to draft Sweat. It sounds like you would have that extra second-round pick. I've already brought up T. Higgins, but I was thinking about this during the break, and then I promise we'll get to your phones. Think about what the Texans did. Think about the Texans. They ended up trading out of the first round this year. And I don't know exactly what they would have wanted or not wanted, or they traded out of the first round this year because Minnesota offered them a bunch of second-round picks in order to move out so Minnesota could get the 2 first-round picks we thought was for them to try to go up and get a quarterback. Houston turned around and used Minnesota's second-round pick in order to get Stephon Diggs. So this is exactly the difference between you and your competitors. The Texans have an opportunity to trade out. The value is worth it. They do. And then they spin that into more players and Stephon Diggs. You just take the DT that we don't even know can play 3 downs, and we don't even know if he can. Connor, what was it that Trevor said on Tuesday? He asked how he got hurt, and he was like, what, speed rushing the buffet?
Yeah, it was something like that.
I mean, we don't know if this guy can stay healthy. We don't know if this guy can stay out of trouble. Skylar texts in and says 2 second-round picks would have been nice. Why in the hell is every single top Titans draft pick over the past few years so questionable? They just cannot do something normal. It is almost as if they overthink it too much. Part of me says, okay, is that because we pick apart these picks so much? Or is part of that because the Titans make a bunch of stupid picks? And so as I'm reading this, I'm thinking in my head. And I'm like, Sweat, question marks. Absolutely nothing to do with us. Everybody says question marks. Latham, question marks. Everybody says it. Nothing to do with us. Last year, Skoronski, tons of question marks, right? Like so many question marks surrounding Skoronski because what position is he going to play? Levis, tons of question marks. Is he an elite quarterback talent? Is he going to take too many pictures of himself? I mean, those were the questions. The year before that, Burks. Was he in shape? Again, what was it that one scout told Bruce Feldman? That he's 2 biscuits shy of being a flexed out tight end. And of course, we're talking not just taking Burks, but taking Burks and trading A.J. Brown for him. And then the other pick was McCreary. So over the last 3 years, and McCreary had short arms. That was kind of the only knock on him. But again, I think McCreary's arms are probably why he's not in the first round. So the one guy over the last 3 years that didn't have like a massive question mark surrounding him was the one guy who's probably the best player. Because when you ask me about players on the Titans I'm excited about right now, and I mean, I'm excited about Levis, but I'm excited to see with Levis. But when you ask me about guys I'm excited about because I think they're really good players, McCreary's up there. And he's the one guy that had the least amount of questions. Mike says, how in the world would the Titans have money for Higgins and Ridley? See, here's how this works, Mike. Will Levis is on a rookie contract, which for any rookie quarterback is a significant deal to its team, with the exception of Michael Penix because they're already paying $1 gazillion for Kirk Cousins. But that's if you take a guy in the first round. If you take a guy in the first round, it's like, yeah, our quarterback's on a rookie contract so we can go out and spend a bunch of money. Like the Texans. But the difference between Anthony Richardson at 4 overall and Will Levis at 33, Richardson's contract in Indianapolis, before you even get to the fifth-year option, is $33.9 million total, which is not a lot for a quarterback, right? Because most quarterbacks, when they get to the second contract, are in the $50 million a year range. Will Levis's total contract, again, $33.9 for Richardson. Will Levis's total contract is $9 million. That's it. For the entire 4 years, it's $9 million. So when the Eagles have the money for Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts, yes, you have the money to be able to pay Calvin Ridley and T. Higgins. Trust me. Again, Jalen Hurts is $50+ million a year in Philadelphia. You're $9 million, period. So you could be able to get like 6 players for the amount of money that Philly is spending on Jalen Hurts. The difference is Philly knows the cap's fake, and they just accept it, and they have the third highest payroll in the NFL, and you don't. And that's a little bit of a difference there. Texter says, Jared, is it really possible that Rand and Callahan are stupid? If they believe in this guy, why not give them the benefit of the doubt? Here's what I would say about benefit of the doubt. First of all, Brian Callahan's not the general manager. This is his first draft, and I'm not sure that he's been through these wars for me to be able to say, hey, you really know when someone is actually trying to pull one over on you and, you know, when you can't get away with certain risks there. Let's not forget Chad Brinker, because my gut tells me the way they run this is by committee. You know, they talk collaboration, and Rand Carthon reports to Chad Brinker. So let's not leave Chad out of this. I think it's all 3 of them. And I would tell you that I have my doubts. That I have my doubts about the committee. And maybe they're right, and maybe I'm wrong, and I'll eat it. If they win a bunch of games, which I am hopeful for, I'll eat it. But I just hear too much I hear just too much fluff and intellectual dishonesty from the Titans that I have a hard time pushing my chips in the middle. And again, it's like the whole ball didn't bounce the way thing yesterday, where TD's like, he's not saying that the ball didn't actually bounce their way and that's why they lost, which, again, I'm not convinced of. I think that Rand got up there and thought that he could just say in front of everybody, well, we only lost 7 one-score games, and if the ball had bounced our way on this play and we would have won that game, like, I think he thought that he could say that and people wouldn't look at him and say, your team sucked, but that's what happened. But again, to me, the idea that, well, you know, we thought we'd give Aaron Brewer a try and it didn't work. Yeah. Right. That's the job. The job is to be right. And so this group already missed on last year. So when you're like, you know, why not give them the benefit of the doubt? That was last year when they told us, no, we need to give Aaron Brewer double the money than we have to give him in order to start at center, even though he's 270 pounds. No. I know Andre Dillard didn't play in Philadelphia and got beat out by a rugby player, but trust me on this, he can be our starting left tackle. They got the benefit of the doubt last year. Now, certain people over there get the benefit of the doubt from me this year, like this idea that they're going to have this revolving door of Scarbinis at right tackle and that I'm supposed to trust Bill Callahan's going to get it done. I'll give you that one. Like, I'll give you that. That's fine. But come on now. Like, you don't get 2 years of benefit of the doubt. You get 1. And then after that, when you start doing the same questionable things that failed the year before, then we get to talk about it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Speaking of benefit of the doubt, boy, I tell you, I'm not disappointed in Joe. I'm disappointed in Robbie Stanley. But I will say this. Robbie showed this morning that he is a good man. And Joe showed that he's like a lot of Titan fans who I just don't get. We'll get to that coming up next. Sign up to play in the 615 Open at the beautiful Hermitage Golf Course on Thursday, June 20th. Compete for amazing prizes, including $10,000 cash for a hole-in-one or a $20,000 kitchen or bath makeover from Eurostone. Plus, you'll have the chance to win exclusive experiences only a radio station can provide. Do not miss out on this incredible event. For more details and to sign up, visit 615open.com. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. So, I don't know, Connor, what time did you wake up this morning?
About 9:15.
9:15, woo! Boy, I'd love to sleep in that late. I woke up at about 6:30 this morning, 6:35-ish. And the reason I tell you that is because I went on Robbie and Rex Road today at 7 a.m. And so I've got, I've got an alarm every Friday, 6:45. I wake up and I go on Robbie and Joe every Friday, and it's always their most popular segment. I don't actually know that. I'm shooting off the rear end of my tush. But the reason I say that is because today, before I go on the program, I take a listen to see what they're talking about. And Robbie was like, I've got a bone to pick with Jared. Or more like, I've got a bone to pick with Jared. And that's not really how Robbie talks, but he's got a little twang in there. And I was like, oh, okay. And they accused me of throwing Will Levis under the bus because of his errant pass that ended up in the lake on Wednesday during a Titans minicamp. Now, my defense of this was we didn't know about the lake. And so I was prepared for that ahead of time. I didn't read. I read while Chris Sanders was on the air with us on Wednesday what Jim Wyatt wrote at the Titans website, and that was that the ball went in the lake. Connor, you can back us up that at that point in time there was no mention of the ball bouncing into the lake, correct?
I have the clip. Yes.
Okay. So that happens, and I go on there, and Robbie, Stanley, and Joe just start busting my ass about how, you didn't say that the ball bounced into the lake, and you're making Will Levis look bad, and you're this, and you're that. And I'm like, that's because the write-up didn't say that the ball bounced into the lake. And I had the text message I sent from Caroline, I sent to Caroline that was copy and pasted from that story when we read it, and it said nothing about the ball bouncing into the lake. So I went on there and I said that. How the hell am I supposed to know the ball bounced into the lake? I just read what the guy wrote. And Robbie's like, well, I've got it pulled up right here in front of me, and it says that the ball bounced into the lake. And that's when I kind of had to say, well, all I know is that somebody from the Titans called into the guest line on Wednesday and told Connor, and Connor, you back this up right here, that the ball bounced into the lake at about 5:55 on Wednesday.
Yep, going into our last segment.
Just that they said, hey, it wasn't that Will Levis, fired the ball into the lake, but it was that the ball went over the fence and then bounced into the lake. Again, I've never seen a ball go in the lake before, but okay, fine, whatever. That's apparently what happened. So I always look at the text line after I go on Robbie and Joe because it's usually pretty fiery. It's usually half the people are like, Jared is so right, or it's the people that are just, they don't have, I guess, thick enough skin. They can't listen to this show. They're like, I'm changing the station right now. And they always, every Friday, text that at 7:02 about, I'm changing the station right now, every time. But I saw it, and Zach in Nashville actually sent in a screenshot that said, no. Jim Wyatt changed the story, or they edited the story on the Titans website on Wednesday or whatever, and he had the screenshot from it. So when I saw that, texted Robbie after they busted my rear end, and I said, I demand an apology. And here is what they decided on Robbie and Rex Rib.
Stilly is demanding a full apology from me from yelling at him about the water thing. Should I give it to him? Should I give Stilly an apology? Are we convinced enough that he was duped by the Titans and that it was added later into the story? There are screenshots from Zach in Nashville.
Yeah, I was going to say known Stilly antagonist Zach in Nashville put up a screenshot and said, unfortunately, Stilly is right. Damn it.
All right, I'll do it. Stilly, I apologize. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for yelling at you.
No,
you did
God,
not lead me astray.
No.
You did not lead me astray.
I don't think you necessarily. I mean, the bottom line is, I think this is a great example of a little bit more measured. So I think, I don't know. That's fine. I mean, he asks for apologies all the time because he was right, because he always, goes back and tells us how he was right about stuff. Like, if we actually did a scoreboard on takes of his right and wrong, he would owe an apology to Nashville every day when he opens his show.
Let me just say this. I apologize when I am dead stinking wrong, like when I apologized the day after the NFL draft, after I guaranteed that the Chargers were not going to draft Joe Alt because they had offensive linemen, they didn't have receivers. I thought it was all a smokescreen. I said, don't worry about it. And then they drafted Joe Alt, and I apologized because I'm a man that apologizes when I'm wrong. Plain and simple. But did you notice in that conversation, Robbie immediately says, you know what? I apologize. And I accept his apology. Joe, on the other hand, is like, I mean, first of all, there is no debate on this. Like, yes, I was right. They changed the story. You can't get mad at me for reading something that didn't exist. But even Joe's like, well, but. And that's my favorite part of this, is because I'm convinced Joe falls in to this weird category of Titans fans that just desire to be triggered by this program. Like you, and I'm not saying all of you, I'm talking about this third of the audience. This is a very popular show, and I think there are 3/3, obviously, that the audience is divided into. The first are the people that like me and like the show. The people that are like, dude, I'll tell you what, like our Titans Coliseum podcast friends that are like, hey, I rock with Jared. Those guys, they like me, they like the show. And shout out to them. Then there's the second group that hate me but like the show. You like the Titans, you like the fact that we talk Titans, we talk Preds, you love the topics and everything, but you're like, God, I just hate that guy. And that's the second third. And then the third, it's the group of the people that hate me and hate the show, that they cannot wait to tell you how much they hate this program and how much they hate me. And that's the group that listens the most. That is the third that just desires to be triggered by me. That's the group that every single day, like, makes up things that I say, like, Jared, you, I think one of them was, somebody this week was tweeting me like, yeah, Jared, remember you said Mike Vrabel would get a job the day after he got fired. You said you rubbed it out. No. What I was the one calling for Vrabel to be fired. I believe that I'm the only person in the media, and if I'm wrong, somebody else show me a tweet or a text or something. I believe, the only person in the local media that called for Mike Vrabel to be fired. But because people want to be triggered by me, they just hear like, you want me to say Will Levis sucks. I don't think Will Levis sucks. But that third of the audience wants it. And Joe is in that group. Joe wants to be triggered by me. And I got to tell you, it's quite a feeling. I also wonder this, too. Did the Titans really need, or did Jim Wyatt really need to go back and write that the ball bounced in the lake? Does it really matter that much? Like, is the context of the ball bouncing in the lake as compared to he threw the ball in the lake, is that much of a difference? Like, are we that sensitive that a bad throw in minicamp is like, oh, no, go back and fix that one? Or can we just, like, have thick enough skin to say, yeah, the ball ended up in the lake, and there's two, jokers, me and Chris Sanders, sitting there laughing about it as we read it, which was very funny when we read it. I've never seen a ball go in the lake before. I don't even care if it bounced in there. I've never seen it go in there. But it's like, again, like, do we need to make, hey, it's okay. It's okay that Will Levis threw that ball in the lake because it bounced. Did you see that? Everybody, it bounced. Is it really that big of a deal? And are the Titans that sensitive? Because it kind of feels like they are. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. By the way, the Vols I believe they went back to back. Christian Moore hit a ball about 800 yards dead center, and then the next guy hit a ball about 900 yards. And so Tennessee leads Evansville. Not looking good, Connor.
Not looking good.
Tennessee leads Evansville 4-2 in the fourth inning. 615-737-1025. Corey Curtis, News 2, is now sporting a beard. It is very surprising to me. But he will join us next here on a Fireball Hot Take Friday at Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Oh, Connor, you're doing such a great job too, baby.
I know it.
That's okay. False start. False start on the offense. Ian, by the way, will be back Monday. Connor's been with us for the last 2 weeks. Connor, I got to say, you've been doing a good job. So we're going to miss you on Monday when Ian returns. But that was like a Dylan Radins false start right there.
Happens
we still
to the
love
best
you,
of
though.
us.
It happens to the best of us. So let's give something away so you guys can go ahead and talk to Connor right now because he's such a good man. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025. You win a pair of tickets to see James Taylor at Bridgestone Arena on June 12th. So good luck on that front. Mandatory minicamp is in the books. And Corey Curtis has a beard. I was shocked when I saw it. It would be like seeing me with blonde hair, and he joins us now on the program. So, Corey, do you want to start on the beard or do you want to start on minicamp?
Let's get the beard out of the way.
What are you thinking?
You know what? I'm 53 years old, and I thought maybe I'm old enough to actually grow one now. and I came to work after not shaving for 5 days, and I said to my boss, "Can I grow a beard?" And he said, "Sure," and I grew a beard.
Does that mean that you were a patchy beard grower when you were younger?
It means I struggled for a long time to look like a grown man.
Well, I'm proud of you. Puberty hits us all at a different point in life, I guess, one way or another. So let's start on minicamp. What was your impression of the Titans?
Oh, gosh. A work in progress. I mean, because you don't get to see everybody, and so much of it's new. I mean, Levis obviously has, some work to do from the timing front and with the receivers and in the reading front with the offense, but you would expect that some this time of the year. At least I would expect that some. We all saw Calvin Ridley, and there's a lot to like there. We all got to watch Bill Callahan work, and there's a lot to like there. And so I guess that's what I'm excited to see is, how much of a difference does coaching really make? Because I think it's a lot, because we saw Munch work, and we saw Munch turn 6th and 7th round picks into good players regularly. And so I'm excited to see what Bill Callahan, more than anything, after seeing what he does, I'm excited to see what these guys can do. I don't expect them to reinvent the wheel, but I don't expect what we saw the last 2 years, which was a turnstile up front.
Corey, are you concerned at all about the way Levis looked in OTAs and minicamp? Because I've been out there for 2 separate days of the 5 available, and I wasn't really impressed with Levis in either of those 2 days. And then clearly he had a terrible day on Wednesday. But at the same time, I mean, it's a new coach. It's a new system. Mm-hmm. He's a young quarterback. I mean, at some point you have to suck at something in order to get good at it. I mean, you got to fall off the bike at some point to learn how to ride it. So do you have any concerns about Levis after what you saw?
Well, I mean, look, would I like for him to be out there sizzling? Yeah. But, I mean, look, he's still in shape. He's still – the delivery's still quick. He's still committed to being great. Those are all things. And the sample size of what we've seen is really small. Now, I mean, I remember when we went to training camp and, we had the year where, Ryan Tannehill's throwing interceptions. Is that Ryan Tannehill or was it the defense? And we found out it was both. You just don't throw interceptions all during training camp and then they go away during the regular season. That sample size was much, much bigger. It was an entire training camp. If we get through the first 2 weeks of camp and Levis is struggling, then I will be concerned. For a 3-day mandatory mini camp, and look at, expectations are high, and he needs to be better, for certain, but he doesn't look like a guy who doesn't know how to play the position, and we've seen that before.
Yeah, I mean they have it on third on the depth chart right now in Malik. That's like we knew after Malik's rookie year that Malik was never going to be an NFL starting quarterback, and I can't say that about Levis after seeing him through his rookie year, and I do think that kind of thing matters. Corey Curtis is with us on the program, News 2, here on the show. So, Tavondre Sweat, the Rams put out a video in which showed them in the war room, and it shows Les Snead making a call saying, hey, would you like to move back to 52, but we'll give you next year's second, and he got turned down. He went to Sean McVay and said they weren't ready to move that far back. And then we matched that up with Brian Callahan, who went to the podium right after Sweat was picked and said, we just weren't ready to drop out of that range of player. I think that beyond the shadow of it, or I would say beyond reasonable doubt, it is likely that the Titans got offered that package and took Tavondre Sweat instead of that extra second rounder from the Rams next year. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that decision, and are you concerned that we have not seen Tavondre Sweat on the field yet?
Well, look, I hate to say it's not up to me to agree or disagree with that decision. That's a big trade offer. That's what I will say. And what I will say is it puts the pressure on the GM and his front office staff. I mean, there are certain moves, that you make, when you take a chance on Caleb Farley, that's one that comes with question marks to it as soon as you make it. And we've seen how that one turned out. When you trade away A.J. Brown and draft Treylon Burks is always compared to A.J. Brown.
Yep.
Tavondre Sweat is now under the microscope. And if he is not a dominant player for this team, everybody's gonna say, "What were you thinking? What were you thinking?" I mean, you could have gotten a second round pick. I mean, so you're still picking in the second round, and then you're getting another second rounder next year. That's a massive trade offer. I mean, to me, that's a whopper of an offer. And look, if Sweat is a baller and a wrecking ball up front with Jeffrey Simmons, then I don't care. You know, they believed in the player and they got it right. But if he's just okay, if he's in and out of the lineup, if he's not what they thought he was, then it's a massive mistake. Then it's a whopper one. But look, they're clearly all in on this guy. I mean, when I talk about this draft class, they got the players they coveted. And so congratulations on that. Now you got to be right. And we're going to see if they're right or not.
So Caroline, and it's funny because a lot of people listen to Caroline, they're like, you're just trying to be like Jared. And I actually think that I probably steal more from her than she steals from me. But Caroline has coined a term that I absolutely love. And she said that right now we are in the midst of what is it'll be fine season. Like, it'll be fine. Speeds, knees, PT, it'll be fine. But we have not seen Tavondre Sweat yet, which means he went through one practice in the NFL and he got hurt. And you know as well as I do that one of the big concerns with players that are out of shape is that they will get hurt. We saw Treylon Burks and how he missed pretty much all the OTAs and everything leading up to his first training camp. And we know what the story of Treylon Burks' career has been. So are you concerned that Tavondre Sweat got hurt after his first practice and has not practiced yet?
Yeah, I'm concerned. I also hate it that I don't know what's wrong with him. You know, I always hate the secrecy to everything. I mean, we've been led to believe it's not that big of a deal, and I'm sure they would rather get him 100% than have him risk getting hurt further at this point, which is probably the smart thing. And I also think with their analytical system for injuries that they've talked about in depth,
cures cancer.
They've got some real metrics that they're looking at before they want to return guys to play. So they've got a chance, number one, to prove that they're smarter in that area here. And that's not really the question that you're asking. Yeah, it concerns me he's hurt right out of the gate. Absolutely. Now, he can answer that when he comes back for camp. He can also be in better shape when he comes back for camp. He's going to have about 6 weeks, to do that. And I'm sure that's got to be the priority, for him, and for the team. The one practice you got to see of him, when he does move, it's impressive. What's not impressive is to see his helmet come off after every rep, okay? So clearly, and that was concerning to me. Clearly he's got some work to do to be ready for the season when it gets here.
Corey Curtis is with us, News 2 on the program. Nicholas Petit-Frere not seen at the mandatory minicamp, though he was there. He's hurt. And so John Ojukwu right now is the starting right tackle of the Tennessee Titans, which takes me to this. Are you scared to death of the right tackle position? Do you think, like Trevor Maddich said this week on our show, he thinks the right tackle is not on the team yet? Or are you in Bill Callahan we trust, it will be fine? Which one are you?
I think this is – are you asking me where I'm at or where I think the team is at?
Where you're at. I know where the team's at.
I don't think the tackle's on the roster yet. That's where I'm at.
Really?
I think the team is going to take a look at these guys, and they're going to have – and I think they're going to take a look for a few weeks during training camp, and then they're going to decide, do we need to bring somebody in or do we not? That's my take on where they are. Look, I think they think he can coach these guys up. They traded for Leroy Watson, who is a guy that he liked off the 49ers practice squad and played for him in Cleveland. So we haven't seen him thrust into that spot yet. I do know, and I know we joke about OJ, but he's a guy that Mike Vrabel liked a lot to start last year, and then he got hurt because I thought he might have a chance to play some last year before the injury.
Well, anybody that played the tackle position had the chance to play some last year for the Titans.
Well, anybody who played the tackle position, if they could have played some tackle, could have helped the Titans get very much of that last year. So that's interesting. And I guess Radens has packed on weight and is now just firmly – they've also told me you're a guard, and then that's it.
I hate that, by the way. I mean, and again, I know Bill Callahan, I know, but I hate that. I thought Radens was not awful at right tackle the back half of last year outside of the false start penalties. But, I mean, he graded higher than the Titans have had at right tackle in the last 2 years at the end of that run right there. And I know Bill, look, he said Bill Callahan sat him down and said, you're a guard. And I'm not going to say that I know more than Bill Callahan because I don't know more than Bill Callahan. But I do hate the idea of no. PT's going to be the right tackle. You gain a bunch of weight and move to guard so that you can sit on the bench behind Sadiq Charles. I don't like that, but that's just me.
Yeah. And well, I mean, look, and Sadiq Charles is going to have to prove he can hang on to that position. I mean, just because he's there now doesn't mean he's going to be there week one. He may, but I don't think that that's chiseled in stone at this point.
Fireball Hot Take Friday. Corey, what's your hot take this week?
You know what? Every time I hear something out of Indianapolis, I just chuckle. If Anthony Richardson plays more than 8 games this year, I'll be stunned.
You know what's so funny? Like sometimes you say something and I want to return back to you. Connor, what are we talking about next on the grid?
Anthony Richardson.
Corey, thank you for the setup into the tease into our next segment.
Okay.
Corey Curtis, News 2, joining us as always. So Corey says he'll be stunned if Anthony Richardson plays 8 games. Titans Twitter is already celebrating the demise of Anthony Richardson. So I talked to a guy I used to work with in Louisville who now does the morning show in Indy. I said, what is the deal with Anthony Richardson? Plus, what Anthony Richardson says is the deal with Anthony Richardson, and have the Colts already screwed him up? We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
All right, the big question out here is about Anthony Richardson. Is he hurt? Is he not hurt? So we asked Anthony Richardson. Here's what he had to say. Then we asked Anthony Richardson again, and you'll hear what he had to say. Then Anthony Richardson was asked a third and fourth and fifth time. I think he's pretty definitive in his response to questions about whether he's injured or whether this is a day of rest.
Yeah, I'm good. Just a little soreness. I've been dealing with soreness since I started throwing. It's just my shoulder, but it's hard to listen to the trainer sometimes. It's like, nah, you got to sit out for a day. I don't want to sit out, but it's part of the health journey. So I'm just rocking with them and just listening.
Is that something they told you to expect after everything?
Oh yeah, we're actually surprised it's only been one day like this. Everything's been smooth sailing so far, and luckily it was the last day. So we're not too worried about it, and we're just trying to keep it going.
Anthony Richardson hurt again is the headline. And Titans Twitter was celebrating Anthony Richardson missing Colts minicamp yesterday like they had won something. Like, oh yeah, oh, this is so great. Anthony Richardson hurt again. Ha, 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 ha. And there actually may be something to that. Because I texted Andy Sweeney. I used to work with Sweeney in Louisville. I used to do the morning show. He used to do the afternoon show. Now he's in Indianapolis doing the morning show. And he's on the top-rated sports show there in the morning. And I'm on the top-rated sports show in the afternoon here in Nashville. And I texted Sweeney, and I said yesterday, is Anthony Richardson still hurt? And he said, just arm soreness, but he's going to stay hurt. I said, that's too bad because that dude's got some talent, which we'll get into in a second. He said if he were a running back or a wide receiver, he'd be the guy who never practices but plays on Sunday. I have zero faith he's going to stay healthy. They went and got Joe Flacco for a reason. Him being sore isn't a surprise, but he is always being looked at by the trainers. And then Sweeney sent a follow-up text, always. So there may be something to these injuries with Anthony Richardson. So let me say this. I would have drafted Anthony Richardson with the number 1 overall pick in 2023. And I was on record of having said that. I would have traded all the way up to go get Anthony Richardson with that number 3 pick that the Titans were working on a deal with Arizona to go up and get drafted. I would have done it for Richardson. That's how much I liked Anthony Richardson's talent coming into last year's draft. And I stand by that. Even as C.J. Stroud had the rookie season that he had, because while I'm not a huge risk taker, I do believe in the fact that, hey, if I'm going to bang the table for somebody, damn it, I'm going to stand by it. And I talk about these GMs and coaches making decisions and being held accountable for them. And I'm telling you right now, I would have pushed all my chips in the middle for Anthony Richardson because I believed in the talent that much. And we always talk about the Jared Stillman draft show meltdowns. That's why half of you guys listen to the draft show. And I melted down when the Colts, who ESPN had told us they're taking Levis, took Anthony Richardson 4th overall because I loved Anthony Richardson. And the only hope that I had, and I hate saying this because I don't like rooting against somebody, to have success. The only hope I had was Indy's going to screw him up. Because that's what they did with Andrew Luck. I mean, I looked at Andrew Luck, and I mean, this was the greatest quarterback prospect I've ever seen. He came into the league right away and was immediately a franchise quarterback. Immediately. And I thought as a Titan fan, oh, God, here we go again. Peyton 2.0. And while Andrew Luck did a little winning, and they got to an AFC Championship game in 2014, the whole Deflategate game, it never panned out with Luck because they got him hurt. And I look back at the Colts drafting Richardson, and I said, they might screw him up. That's the only hope, is that they screw him up. Because with that level of talent, if you put him in the right organization and the right system and the right set of circumstances, with that talent, he could be Patrick Mahomes meets Cam Newton. And I really believe that. And I told you guys the whole time, last year before the draft, I said, If I'm the Titans, I push all the chips in the middle to move up to 3 to take Richardson. I take him, and I go to the podium 5 minutes after I take him, and I say Ryan Tannehill is our starting quarterback. Right then and there. After the Combine in 2023, I texted a former NFL head coach, and I said, if I'm the Colts, I'm either keeping Matt Ryan for another year or I'm signing Gardner Minshew because they had hired Shane Steichen to be the coach to run the Jalen Hurts offense, and I am sitting Richardson on the bench, and I am letting him sit there for a year, and I am letting him learn. In fact, I actually said I'm also signing Dalton Schultz from the Cowboys, and Dalton Schultz was a huge part of C.J. Stroud's rookie year. But not Indy. Indy signed Minshew, and the day they signed Minshew during the NCAA basketball tournament. They signed him before the draft, and I was like, oh no, because I'm like, this is a smart thing that the Colts are doing, like signing Minshew so they can take Richardson, so that they can. But then they took him and they said, Jim Irsay, I think, was the one that came out and was like, oh, well, yeah, he's going to play right away, and we're going to. And I thought, you idiots. You morons. And that's exactly what happened. Anthony Richardson played his first game. Afterwards, Trevor Lawrence went up to him and said, dude, you cannot take the kind of hits that you took in college in this league. That's not Trevor Lawrence trying to sabotage Richardson. That's Trevor Lawrence, player to player, saying, dude, if you're going to make it, like, you've got to understand this is the NFL. This is different than college. I had somebody tweet me earlier today that said, well, T'Vondre Sweat played a lot in college. Why are you worried about him in the NFL? I'm like, this is the NFL. This isn't college. And what Shane Steichen do? I talked, when the Titans made the quarterback switch, I talked to another former NFL head coach who was an offensive guy. And I said to that coach, this was all about Levis. And I said to that coach, how do we know if a quarterback's going to be the guy? And how do you bring a young quarterback along? And how do you all these things? And he said, and this was just part of the conversation, he goes, I'm watching Indianapolis, and they're running these QB sweeps for the young quarterback. And I'm like, you're going to get this guy hurt. Like, you're going to get this guy killed. What are you doing? Running QB sweeps for this young quarterback to get him drilled. And what happens? Richardson takes off and Harold Landry hits him, and now all of a sudden he's out for the year. He got hurt twice last year, and I think he played in like 5 games. So on one hand, as a Titan fan, I am happy that it looks like, Corey said he'd be shocked if Anthony Richardson plays 8 games this year. Andy Sweeney, the host of the morning show in Indianapolis, is like, he's always going to be hurt. So as a Titan fan, I am kind of happy that the Colts have ruined Anthony Richardson, or it looks like they're on their way to ruining Anthony Richardson. On the other hand, knowing what I think Anthony Richardson could have been, it makes me sick to my stomach. I mean, the amount of talent that freaking kid has. He had no business being on the football field last year. He was 22 years old. He had played in a handful of games, in college. He played 1 season worth of games. He needed to be on the bench. And I'm sure the Titans would have screwed it up here, too, if they had taken him, because the Titans do a lot of stupid stuff. But one thing, and I know you guys always text in every time I criticize the Titans and say, why don't you be head coach? Why don't you be GM? But sometimes we do get it right and they do get it wrong. And when it came to Richardson, this was so simple to me. It was so obvious. It was like, this kid is so young. This kid is so raw. This kid has so much talent. He's Vince Young in Cam Newton's body with Brett Favre's arm. Like, I think he ran a 4.4 at the Combine. Vince ran a 4.6. And you guys remember Vince running all over the field? And yet, if I had taken him, I would have right then and there gotten out in front of it the same way Andy Reid got out in front of it, saying Mahomes is sitting on the bench. And Indy couldn't do it, and I think that you guys might be right. I think that I think they may have ruined Anthony Richardson. I really think that. And again, it's good news for the Titans, but God, does it make me sick to my stomach knowing what that kid could have been. And I will not walk that back. If Richardson never makes it, and it's because of the injuries, I'll be like Floyd when you ask him about Vince Young. Floyd, what happened to Vince Young? All I know is when I was here, he was Rookie of the Year and he was going to the Pro Bowl. I.e., they screwed him up. Jeff Fisher, Norm Chow, that group. Don't blame me. When I was in charge, he was on the right path. Jared, you loved Anthony Richardson. Yeah, and I would have sat him on the bench for a year so he can learn what the NFL is all about. I would have sat his ass on that bench. I would have had him play in those preseason games. I would have had him learn that offense. I would have had him be Gardner Minshew's caddy. And then I'd turn it over to him the same way they turned it over to Mahomes with Alex Smith. And it makes me sick that the stupid Colts couldn't have done better. And they'll probably get him hurt again this year. 615-737-1025. Let's talk Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. Fireball Whiskey goes down so smooth, and it tastes so great. There is no better way to ignite the night than to do it with ice-cold Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. CMA Fest is in town, and that means there will be a lot of Fireball to be had in the streets of Nashville. That's Fireball Whiskey. Ignite the night. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey.
in the case of Richardson, obviously all that talent is there. Maybe the injury was a blessing in disguise because it gave him an opportunity to sit for a year and learn what the National Football League is like. He needs reps. That's obvious. That was true coming out of Florida. But he too is a game-changing talent. His arm is, among the top 5 strongest in the league. He can throw it through a wall. He became more accurate as the season went on at Florida, where he developed his footwork a little bit better. It was awful at the start of the season. It was, less than ideal by the end of the season, but you could tell it was coming. And he can make every throw. He can make every throw accurately. He works at it. He's got a good head on his shoulders. And as a runner, he's big and powerful and incredibly fast.
That was Bill Polian, former Colts general manager, talking about Anthony Richardson, saying, you know what, it might be better off for him that he did sit on the bench because he's got a lot to learn. I don't think what happened to him, that shoulder injury, I don't think that's good for anybody. There is one thing about the Colts. You guys get on me because I talk about every time the Titans take a guy with red flags, it's just like, just banging your head against the wall kind of stuff. The Colts might be worse at that because they're banking on Laiatu Latu at 15, a guy who was told by a college at Washington, a good college, that he may never be able to play again, and they took him 15th. And then they took A.D. Mitchell, who I thought probably could have gone 15th with his talent, but his attitude got him pushed down to 46 or 52 or wherever it was they took him, and they ended up taking him there late in the second round. You talk about red flags. Woof. Texter says, dude, you are clueless on Anthony Richardson. He is ass. Did you not watch him at Florida, says one texter. I did watch him at Florida. By the way, our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. I did watch him at Florida. And I watched him single-handedly beat a Utah team that was really, really good. Then I watched him go out the next week against Kentucky, and it looked like he could not throw the ball. Then I watched Bob Shoop, as the defensive coordinator at South Florida, absolutely tear him apart in a game that they barely won at the very, 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 very end of the game. And then I watched him throw for 800 yards against UT. But I didn't watch Anthony Richardson. I didn't study Anthony Richardson. That's why every time we talked about the quarterbacks in this class, because the Titans had a quarterback, I wasn't studying these young quarterbacks to tell you anything more than just kind of what I thought about them from college football, which is I think Caleb Williams is a great talent. I think he has got a head full of mush, and that would worry me. I think Drake May is really, really young and has a lot of talent, and I think Jaden Daniels put up a lot of stats, but I think I would go with May over Daniels just because of the prototypical quarterback build and youth on Drake May's side. I do not buy the J.J. McCarthy thing. I like Penix. I think he's an injury risk and a little bit old. And Bo Nix was coached by my buddy, and he swears by him, but I don't know if I really look at him and see an NFL quarterback. But I didn't study any of those guys, so I don't feel, super, super convicted on any of that. I did study the previous class. And I woke up one night in the middle of the night. I hurt my neck. When you wake up now, I'm in my 30s. So now, Connor, you have no idea what any of this is about at your age. But I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and I had a sore neck. I couldn't, turn my head, and I couldn't go back to sleep. And so I was like, all right, we're going to talk about all these quarterbacks. We need to watch them. And so I watched them. I watched Anthony Richardson. I watched him lose to Vanderbilt, and I came away from that saying, my God, this guy's awesome. He threw for, again, 350 yards or something. And they lost the game because a Florida punt returner dropped a punt in the end zone. Vandy fell on it for a touchdown. By the way, Will Levis lost to Vandy that year, too. But I watched Richardson tape. I'm like, my God, he's so good. Somebody texted him to the text line and said, Richardson sucked against Georgia. And I didn't know, whether or not he played well. I didn't study the game. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to watch it. And I watched Richardson play Georgia, and I was like, my God, I love this guy. And then I felt like I needed to watch Hooker and Levis versus Georgia, too, since they were comparable and we were talking these guys. Levis, they scored 6 points, and I walked out of that game after watching it saying, you know what? That guy gave them a chance. They scored 6 points, and I felt better about Levis after I watched it. I watched Tennessee with Hooker, and I'm like, it was going to very good against Georgia. So, yeah, I watched Anthony Richardson at Florida, and I get it. I understand the hype. I mean, that guy, Bear Alexander, who's a defensive lineman now for USC, but he was a 5-star recruit. He played for Georgia. He's a 330-pound DT. He is going to be a first-round draft choice in the NFL probably next year. And on one play in the Georgia game, he jumped on Anthony Richardson's back. Again, a 330-pound DT. And Richardson carried him on his back 5 yards up the field before he ran into a scrum of Georgia defenders that brought him down. I watched some of the throws Richardson makes. It's a flick of the wrist. His arm is stronger than Levis's. And he's faster than Vince Young. Guy is a freak. But again, I think you've got to nurture it. And Indianapolis didn't do any of that. They're like, he's going to play right away, and we're going to call QB sweeps for him, and we're going to, and they got him hurt. Which, I mean, is just crazy. I mean, it's, make of it what you will. One texter into the text line says, I laughed when people compared Jaden Daniels to Lamar Jackson. Jaden Daniels will break like Anthony Richardson, too. I do not think that Jaden Daniels is anything similar to Anthony Richardson. I mean, I really don't think that they're really all that similar at all. You know, I do think that there is some Lamar Jackson in Daniels' game, whereas I think that there's probably more Cam Newton in Richardson's game, though I do think that Richardson is more accurate than Newton was as a rookie, and I think that Newton probably was more elusive as a runner than Richardson was at this point. One texter into the text line says, I'm sick of the Titans just picking guys that could be good. I feel like they take guys that have great potential and they ignore the risks of the players. Why not just take the players that are good right now? That comes from Jeff in Kansas. And I've said this. I've said this. And when I say this, people get mad, and I don't care. You can get mad. All the risks the Titans keep taking, it's wild to me, given that they just fired their former general manager for taking those risks. Now, Farley's back was a risk. Julio's hamstring was a risk, and ultimately it got him fired. And the Titans' current triumvirate of decision makers just ignores it and takes injured guys and, overweight guys and DWI guys and all kinds of stuff. Guards with the 11th pick. I mean, it's wild. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Okay. The OTAs wrap up next week for the Titans, but minicamp is officially in the books. So I've got 5 takeaways from the spring period for the Titans. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company on a Fireball Hot Take Friday here on ESPN 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in to 102.5 The Game this Sunday for coverage of the Toyota Save Mart 350. Coverage will begin at 1:30. The race starts at 2:30. Coverage also available on the 102.5 The Game app and at thegamenashville.com. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Mandatory mini camp on this Fireball Hot Take Friday is in the rearview mirror for the Titans. They will have an OTA on Tuesday. And then everybody packs it up, and they're gone for about 5 weeks. And Jared will be gone for 3 of those 5 weeks. I'll be back for the NHL draft and all the surrounding drama, free agency, sorrows. I'll be all here for that. But everything else, I'll be gone. And I will say this. It has been an eventful spring for the Titans. From the second they fired Mike Vrabel on, it has been very eventful. There have been 5 open practices, 2 of which I've been to, 3 of which I'm making assumptions based on things that have been reported or have heard from guys like TD, things of that magnitude. But I have 5 takeaways from the off-season so far. Because, again, we've got an OTA on Tuesday. But from the Titans off-season program, we start at the top with my first takeaway.
Number 1.
Will Levis is a work in progress. Again, he threw a ball in the lake on Wednesday. Yes, it bounced before it went into the lake for everybody sensitive out there that's going to get all worked up about the fact that he did throw a ball into the lake. But in the 2 days I was there on top of Wednesday, in which he was reportedly awful, and Brian Callahan even said the offense was terrible that day, on the 2 days I was there, I watched him in the 7-on-7, which wasn't much. And I thought, especially the minicamp day on Tuesday, where I thought he was really a day late and a dollar short on a lot of these throws, including a throw that he just missed a wide open Calvin Ridley, and Ridley jammed his shoulder on the sideline, and I was like, oh, God. So Will Levis is a work in progress. But the reality with Will Levis is he's going to be a work in progress throughout the entire season. This is not just he's working out the kinks in the offseason. They'll get to training camp. He's taking the boys out. They're going to throw around, during the break, and he's going to come back to training camp, and he's going to be ready to go. This season is going to be a work in progress for Will Levis. And I know I'm not the most patient person in the world, so it is something for me to be the guy who is preaching this. But just know last year, Jordan Love was 3-6. At one point, the Packers were 7-8, and thank God they got the Carolina Panthers the next week. And they didn't lose again until the divisional round of the playoffs when they had San Francisco dead to rights, and San Francisco only won because the Packers don't have a kicker. So it is going to be a whole season-long thing with Levis. It's not just going to be, he's going to be ready week 1 against Chicago. The defense is going to have to carry this team for the first month and a half of the season, if not more. And I don't know that the defense is that good. But again, the hope here is that the Will Levis of December is significantly better and more comfortable than the Will Levis in September. Connor?
Number 2.
Thank you. There are a lot of guys that are competing for what I call varsity spots. There's the varsity and there's the JV this time of the year. Malik Willis is on the JV. He's not going to be on the varsity. He's not competing for a varsity spot. Harold Landry is on the varsity team. And then there are some guys that are somewhere in between. Kyle Phillips, Nick Westbrook-Akine, those kind of guys. So while there are a lot of guys that we already know are varsity players, right? Levis, Spears, Pollard, Cushenberry, Latham, Skoronski, Hopkins, Landry, Simmons, Hooker, Snead, all those kind of guys. Awuzie. Those are all varsity guys, and that's not going to change. But there are a lot of guys that are JV players that are competing, I believe, for varsity snaps. Josh Wiley is a name that seems to be popping up a lot, for instance. And his name keeps coming up with the top group. It was Levis looking for him when he threw the ball that bounced in the lake the other day. I saw Levis in the first mini camp, or first OTA. I saw Levis fire one over in the seam to Wiley, hit him for a big gain. And we keep hearing Wiley's name. Wiley has 9 catches, is a former 5th-round pick, and is coming off of an injury. But it wouldn't surprise me if we saw him with the top group. Burks and Nick Westbrook-Akine are JV guys. Burks has been demoted from the varsity, but they're guys that are apparently competing for reps. Sadiq Charles, Dylan Radens, John Ojukwu on the offensive line. And Gabe Judy-Lally is an undrafted free agent at corner, and he seems to be competing with the varsity in practice. I mean, he broke up a pass that was intended for DeAndre Hopkins when I was there on Tuesday. And Gabe Judy-Lally, the former Vanderbilt Commodore and Tennessee Volunteer, Gabe Judy-Lally does feel right now like the undrafted free agent who's most likely to make the team. And while I certainly never watched him play in college and thought to myself, that guy is an NFL player, he's got game, I was thinking to myself this morning, he surely can't be worse than Trey Avery and Eric Guerrer, who once you get past Snead, Awuzie, McCreary, Brownlee, it's like, okay, would you rather roll the dice with Gabe Judy-Lally or roll Eric Guerrer and Trey Avery back out there? I'll take Judy-Lally. And it looks like he's competing for some varsity snaps, even though most undrafted free agents start firmly on the JV. Connor.
Number 3.
Nicholas Petit-Ferrer is supposedly doing great, like a box of Frosted Flakes. The problem has been his availability has been that of the milk carton. They keep begging him to take this right tackle position. We talk about varsity guys and JV, and I mean, they have given him the right tackle position. No competition. Jalen Duncan and John Ojukwu are not real threats to be starting right tackles in the NFL. And yet, for whatever reason, he can't get out on the field. Every time Brian Callahan gets asked about him, he's glowing about him. He's doing great. He's awesome. He's a Nick Holtz. He's doing great. We got these guys. Bill Callen's good. It's great. And yet, I don't know how they can possibly trust PT when getting on the field has been such an issue for him. You know, he was pretty much on the field his entire rookie year, albeit he wasn't very good. But then last year, the gambling suspension, then he comes back from the injury, and he's terrible. And he doesn't initially get out on the field when he comes back from the gambling suspension because Chris Hubbard, a Scarbini right tackle they signed off the street, was better than he was, so they left Hubbard out there. Then they tried to play him a left tackle. Then they moved him back to right tackle. Then he got hurt because T.J. Watt just ripped his arm off by flying off the edge. And now the Titans are begging him, please be our right tackle. And he can't get out on the field. And again, these are my takeaways, not what Nick Holtz says in a press conference.
Number 4.
The defense is ahead of the offense consistently in a passing camp, and that's not necessarily a good thing. L'Jarius Sneed is not even competing. And if you were to say, hey, the Titans are having a passing camp, the guy in 7-on-7, when there's no defensive line and no real pass rush, the guy in 7-on-7 that would be the best player for the defense is L'Jarius Sneed. And again, he hasn't been out there. So when the defense is consistently getting the better end of the Titans offense with all these veteran and high-priced receivers, that is a concern. Because I know Bill Callahan is one of the greatest offensive line coaches who ever lived, and I'm not questioning that. But once the other team gets a pass rusher out there, that might be a problem. Like if that's J.C. Latham's first game in the NFL and it's Montez Sweat coming off the edge, well, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for young Mr. Levis than it is right now in a 7-on-7 passing camp with no pads, where he can't get hit. So the offense, under the guru, Brian Callahan, has got a lot of work to do. And I think anybody could say that.
Number 5.
I almost said Montez. Tavondre Sweat is a no-show. Again, the number one ability in the NFL is availability. It's the number one ability. That's why guys like Nick Westbrook-Akine keep getting on the field, because he is always available to be on the field. And Tavondre Sweat, I thought was a great player in college. I thought big fat guy, makes big plays, sets up Byron Murphy at Texas, a big old fat boy with feet. I love the big man. But at the same time, they drafted him at 38 to be a star. And when you've got red flags, whether it's your weight, whether it's your partying, whether it's the DWI you got, when you've got red flags and you can't even get on the field for mini camp, that's a concern. The biggest concern with guys that are overweight when it comes to sports is A, they get hurt, and B, they can't play as much. In order for T'Vondre Sweat to be worth the 38th pick in the draft, he has got to be on the field on third down and in the fourth quarter and with 2 minutes to go. And right now, he can't even get on the field for minicamp. He can't even get on the field for OTAs. It's a big risk the Titans took. And they took him, and they put him out there. And I'm going to tell you right now, they put him out there, and he was there for 1 day of minicamp, of rookie minicamp, and that's it. That's not a good sign. 615-737-1025. So those are my takeaways. 615-737-1025. There's one thing the Titans have done, and I do not like it. It makes me nervous. And I know, in Bill Callahan we trust, but it's something that I really do think needs somewhat of an explanation. We'll get to that coming up next. Hey, tune into 102.5 The Game. Tomorrow as the Nashville Cats take on the Billings Outlaws. Pre-game at 6:30, kickoff at 7. Coverage also available on the 102.5 The Game app and at thegamenashville.com. Cats football presented by Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning.
one thing I know, with Bill Callahan coaching the offensive line, they're going to play differently, and they're going to be much more efficient than they were previously, simply because he's as good as there is. And there may be some lineup changes. He may shake up that, as Coach Levy used to say, shake up that Pepsi bottle and get a new group that works cohesively with names that right now you don't know.
There you go. That was Bill Polian, Hall of Famer on Sirius XM NFL Radio. I know. In Bill Callahan we trust. And if there's any coach over there, if there's anybody over there, I told you, I don't necessarily trust the owner. Remember, they told Diana, Vrabel's our coach. We think he's a top 5 coach in the league. They told Diana Rossini, and they fired him anyways. I don't trust the GM. The guy that said that they knew Michael Penix was going to be taken by the Falcons. Not sure I trust that. But if there's anybody over there I trust, it's Bill Callahan. So I'm going to criticize a decision the Titans made, and I am saying this with the disclaimer of I know. In Bill Callahan we trust. But there's one thing they've done, and I don't like it, and it's that they have taken Dylan Radunz off of right tackle completely. From the very beginning, Radunz said, Bill Callahan sat him down and said, yeah, no more tackle for you, play the cut.
We talked about you playing guard. I mean, how good is it to be able to lock in at one spot and just sharpen your skills there?
Yeah, that's where I've been working out mostly this off season, and like I said, being able to learn from Bill at that one spot has just been awesome. I've learned a lot so far, and it's going well.
How early in the process did it become evident that that was going to be your focus?
I think the first time I sat down with Bill, I think that was kind of the conversation we had, just moving to guard and working predominantly at guard and stuff. And I mean, I know I can play other positions as well, but just being able to focus on one is pretty nice.
Oh, I don't like that. I don't like that. And it's not that I love Dylan Radunz, because I don't. I am fond of his whole never give up thing. He really has been kicked down and gotten back up. And I appreciate that. He's worthy, he's ready, and they can knock him down, but never knock him out. But I have zero faith in any of the guys that they have playing right tackle. The 3 guys. PT, Jalen Duncan, and John Ojukwu. I have no faith in those guys. No matter how much they tell me they believe in him, I know, Nick Holtz. We believe these guys have all been great. We haven't put the pads on yet, but they've been great. And I just don't like it because I know Daniel Brunskill can play right guard. I don't think Daniel Brunskill's very good, but I know he can play right guard. And it's guard, so you can fudge it. It's not tackle you can't fudge. So Daniel Brunskill, Sadiq Charles, somebody from the practice squad, I don't care. Put him at right guard. That should be okay. But this is right tackle. And are we sure? And I mean, I'm saying this, to Bill Callahan, the great Bill Callahan. Are we sure that John Ojukwu is better than Dylan Radunz? Because Dylan Radunz at the end of last year was, in my opinion, Dylan Radunz was the best right tackle the Titans have had the last 2 years at the end of last season. That doesn't mean that I think he's good. Doesn't mean that I think they need to go get somebody better, because I do think they need somebody better there. But to say, okay, you're guard. There you go. It's like, I don't like that. Are you sure, Bill Callahan, that John Ojukwu better? Trevor said this about Radunz. He said he thinks Radunz is a guard and that he doesn't necessarily have the footwork for tackle. And I understand that. But Trevor, because Trevor watches the Titans, Trevor knows how unreliable Nicholas Petit-Frere is. So he's like, yeah, I probably would have Radunz over there a little bit at tackle too. Even though he doesn't think that Radunz is a tackle. And my guess is Bill Callahan probably watched every cut that there was of Titan football over the last however many years and saw what Trevor saw. And so he just said, okay, you're going to play guard. But I always hear these guys say, it's about getting the best 5 out there. And are you sure that John Ojukwu is better than Dylan Radunz? Are you sure that Jalen Duncan, who sucks, are you sure that he's better than Dylan Radins. And I don't think you can say that. So, again, I know. In Bill Callahan we trust, and if anybody gets the benefit of the doubt, it's old Bill. But, woof, making me nervous. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you want to weigh in here on our program, one texter says, when this administration gets fired for doing this and taking all of the risks they have, fans can't get mad at you for telling them that this style is a mistake. So I don't know if this administration's going to get fired. I don't know when they're going to get fired. I mean, I guess we talked about this yesterday. Most of these jobs you get hired to get fired. So they'll probably get fired in some fashion. Bill Belichick got fired. Yesterday, a bunch of people texted him, Bill Cowher. He went out on his own terms. Very few guys get to go out on their own terms. Bill Cowher's one of them. But here's what's going to happen. The same guys, Kaharski brings this up all the time, and he's right. The same guys that used to bang the table for "In J-Rob we trust" are the same people that are banging the table for this administration right now. The exact same people. I got people blowing up my Twitter mentions about how great Rand is every day. I was joking with Robbie earlier today. Somebody sent out a tweet, and it said something like, the EA Sports is going to announce the cover of Madden Football next week. And I was going to quote tweet it and say, Titan fans, do not freak out when Rand Carthon is not the Madden cover athlete this year for all of those free agent signings that you guys think are just so great, even though they haven't played a snap of football for the Titans yet. Do not get upset about that. It's obviously a joke, but that's how over the top some of these people are. Here's what happens. They're for him. Titans fire them, and then they say, Amy was right to do that. Like, they could cut Will Levis today and say Malik's going to be the starter, and those people would say, the Titans know what they're, I'll trust the Titans over you. There's one guy who blows up my Twitter mentions all the time. And when the Titans played the Colts, I was looking for a quote from Chris Ballard from a press conference where I think Chris Ballard said something along the lines of, if Richardson wasn't there, we would have taken Levis. And so the way that I find what the day of these press conferences are is I use Twitter and I put the keywords in, and then it usually comes up, and then I go back to that day's press conference. So I put in there Chris Ballard Levis. And there was a guy who was a Titan fan. Remember all the reporting leading up to the 23 draft was that the Colts were all in on Levis? I think Todd McShay reported that if the Colts don't take Levis, he doesn't know what they're going to do. And so there was a guy who's a Titan fan that's always up in my Twitter mentions all the time and everything else. And I searched Chris Ballard Levis. And this guy's tweet came up from before the draft that was like, ha ha, Chris Ballard's going to take Will Levis and he's going to suck, or something along those lines. And the guy's Twitter picture, because again, this was in the middle of last season, was a picture of Will Levis in an Oilers uniform. I was like, you guys, come on now. It's like, oh, the Titans said it's good. And so what will happen is, if this administration gets fired for taking the risks and for the risks not working, is that they'll shift as soon as the team does. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Speaking of that, we believe in the duck theory around here. If it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, chances are, as we all know, it's probably a duck. Coming up next, in my opinion, there is no doubt that the Titans turned down that Rams second-round pick. And yet, I got a bunch of people that are unwilling to accept the quacking of the duck. We'll get to that next here on our program on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Let's talk about Twice Daily. You guys know that I love Twice Daily. You guys know that I go to Twice Daily all the time. Really love the boneless wings they have there. The boneless wings at Twice Daily are legit. And I also love really the chicken sandwiches. Their pizzas say 410 calories, which I'm shocked by because they are delicious with how good they are. Let me tell you, though, Twice Daily's the best. They've got all of your cravings, and you can save on every visit. Stop in and get rewarded. All you need to do is join the Twice Daily loyalty program to unlock special discount savings, enter their sweepstakes, and more. For instance, today I got a free bottle of Hydrolite because I am a Twice Daily Rewards member. So try the new wraps, Italian, ham and cheddar, turkey and Swiss, and Nashville hot chicken. They're made to order with your favorite toppings, and when you download the Twice Daily app, you can order ahead. At Twice Daily, it's snack time all the time, and they've got favorites like chicken fingers, tater rounds, pretzels, and more. Twice Daily. What are you craving?
Devondre Sweat, I think, surprised people in the second round. I really do. I think it surprised a lot of people because a lot of people thought he was ticketed more towards the third round. A lot of people think he might just be a 2-down defensive tackle. Weight, can he hold that weight and maybe slim it down a little bit so he can stay on the field? He had some issues along the way. You mentioned issue going into the draft. Tennessee actually had him in the day after the issue happened, the DUI, and then took a contingent of people to his hometown to talk with a lot of people, to make sure him, spend time with him, family. They believed in what they were getting, signed him. Plus the mantra of being more physical, more tough, tougher than they had been. Not that they weren't under Mike Vrabel, because that was his mantra too, but that mantra continues here. and he fit what they were looking for. And you mentioned it, being better and stronger on the offensive and defensive lines.
That was Charles Davis on Sirius XM NFL Radio. He's like, yeah, dude, people were shocked that they took T'Vondre Sweat. But the Titans did visit with him, and they flew to him, and, hey, there you go. And yet I cannot get over. The Rams put out their War Room video, which, by the way, why don't the Titans ever do this? Why don't we ever see any behind-the-scenes Titans draft night from the War Room, the conversations? All we ever see is like the Ram pick up the phone and say, hey, Johnny, it's Ram with the Titans. Would you, here's Miss Amy. And it's like, hey, Johnny, I'm so excited you're going to be a Titan. And that's the end of it. Like, that's all we get to see. There we see, like, the discussions and the decisions and the, it'd be nice we get to see a little bit of that stuff. I mean, again, Rand called it the most accurate board he's ever been a part of, so can we see it? But anywho, so the Rams put out this War Room video where we've already talked about the fact that in The Athletic, Jordan Rodriguez put out there that the Rams were desperate for Braden Fisk because they wanted to pair him with Jared Verse, his former teammate at Florida State, and they thought that the combination of the two could replace Aaron Donald, which I thought was, I think it's good thinking because you're not going to replace Aaron Donald with one guy unless you draft Lawrence Taylor. And so the Rams make that massive trade to move up and get Braden Fisk because their coaches and their GM and everybody else, they knew they had to have the two guys together. Well, the massive trade they made was to go to 39, which included next year's second-round pick. The Titans took T'Vondre Sweat, a guy that all the draft gurus said they would not take with the 38th pick, at 38. And so in the War Room video, I think it is beyond a reasonable doubt that the Titans turned down the Carolina package because of the way that Les Snead, the GM of the Rams, relays the info to Sean McVay, the head coach, is almost verbatim what Brian Callahan said to the media after they ended up taking Sweat. Here is what Snead said to McVay.
Hey, we're at 52. Would you do a future two to come back to 52?
I'll call you back.
Yeah, that's too far. They don't want to come that far.
Okay, that's too far. They don't want to come that far. Brian Callahan after they drafted Sweat.
Some of these calls and some of these trades, you're dropping down a significant level of player when you start dropping deep into the second, and sometimes the reciprocal value isn't there because everyone thinks that they can try to pull one over and get a deal, and that's not how it works. So there's a cost of doing business, and when you want to come up that high, there's things that are required, and some teams meet it, some teams don't. But I think there was just a world of player that we weren't quite ready to dip out of.
So right then and there, they told you kind of the same thing that Les Snead told Sean McVay. And so, to me, it's pretty obvious the Titans turned that down for T'Vondre Sweat. And yet, the amount of Titan fans on Twitter right now that are just going bonkers with me about how I'm fabricating some narrative and I'm making it up and I don't know what I'm talking about and the video doesn't say it. And guys, if I'm ever on trial for murder, I hope you're in the jury. Because to me, it is pretty obvious that the Titans turned that package down. And people say, they didn't say that they turned it down, Jared. They didn't say they turned that package down. If you look at the video, they say, guys, use your brains. If they're going to make that trade for 39, don't you think they'll make that trade for 38? Like, we really, really want Braden Fisk, but only at 39. We don't want that trade at 38. And what I'm surprised by is your argument, if you love the Titans and you think Rand and Brian Callahan and Chad Brinker are the smartest people in the world, your argument should not be that they turned down the package or that they didn't get offered the package, they got offered one pick behind them. Your argument should be that T'Vondre Sweat is worth turning that package down, which I don't believe he is. And here's what I would tell you. Would you take Chris Jenkins, the defensive tackle from Michigan who went 49 to Cincinnati? Would you take Chris Jenkins if you gave up either your 5th or 6th round pick to move back up ahead of Cincinnati. So Jarvis Brownlee, which is basically what Carolina did in order to move back up and take a running back. Would you rather have Chris Jenkins and T. Higgins or Tavondre Sweat? Because I believe Cincinnati would pull the trigger on a second next year the same way Buffalo pulled the trigger on a second next year for Stephon Diggs. I think Cincinnati would pull the trigger on a second next year for T. Higgins. So you can have Tavondre Sweat, Jarvis Brownlee, and Tyler Boyd, or you can have Chris Jenkins and T. Higgins. And I know you guys, because I know how much you guys talked about Higgins when he was a potential free agent before they tagged him, which everybody knew they were going to tag. And I know you guys would have taken Jenkins and Higgins. But again, if you're trying to argue, if you're one of these bobos that's just going to go all in on the Titans no matter what, your point should be that Tavondre Sweat is better than that Rams package. But because you know he's not, or you know, I don't even know that he's not, you think that it's more likely than not that he is not that. You're not arguing that. You're just saying, you're creating a narrative, Jared. You don't know. And let me just say this. I know something I can't tell you. I know they got offered the Rams package. It's obvious. So stop crying tears because the mean man on the radio brought it to your attention. Because it's ridiculous. Woo. Unbelievable. I mean, even some of these things on Twitter, it's like, if you watch the video, it shows a phone call where they're asked to move up for a future 2, and the team, it seems you're assuming it's the Titans, automatically said no, it was too far. The Panthers are the only team that bit, asking for a pick this year. The Rams called back after the Sweat pick. Well, of course the Rams called back after the Sweat pick. That's when Carolina was on the clock. They're not going to call Carolina when Carolina's not on the clock if they don't think the player's there. This is how this works. I call you at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If my guy's there, would you be willing to do this? Call me back. Okay. That's how it works. Then they're on the clock. Hey, my guy's there. Would you be willing to do this? If your guy's not defined, let's trade out. That's how those trades work. Unless you're Rand, who said on Bussin' with the Boys that he had a deal for the Tajay Spears pick and that there was a deal that a team wasn't willing to make. They called when they were back on the clock and said, would you make the pick? And he was like, well, I've already decided I'm going to take Spears. So even though this was a trade I was going to make, now I'll just say no for the principle of it. Unbelievable. I get so crazy. I don't know why I care so much. But when people just become delusional, like when it becomes ridiculous of just the lengths people will go to either get mad at me or to back their team no matter what, it's like I can't have a conversation with you. Like if you just, everything the Titans do is great and there's no discussing, what could have been or what should have been, or then like as a sports show, like I just can't have a conversation with you. If you can't be critical of your team, I can't have a conversation with you. And again, I think most Titan fans are reasonable. I think most Titan fans look at it and say, yeah, I hope J.C. Latham can move over to left tackle. But the ones that go crazy are just obnoxious, are the ones that are sitting there saying like, oh, no, you don't know anything, I'll tell you. Yeah, you guys were the ones that still were J-Rob we trust, and they fired him, said it was the best thing that ever happened. One texter says, you have no idea about Higgins for a second-round pick. What's worse was keeping Henry for an extra game for no reason instead of trading him. Okay, so first of all, they kept Henry for an extra 2 and 4, and then there was another week, so they played 3 and 4, 7 games. There were 10 games when they decided not to trade Derrick Henry. I actually believe not trading Derrick Henry was the right thing to do. And the reason why I believe not trading Derrick Henry last year at the deadline or DeAndre Hopkins was the right thing to do, which Mike Florio said Rand wanted to trade Henry and Hopkins, and Mike Vrabel put his foot down and said no, and I don't know if that's true or not. But the reason why I think that was a good idea was because if you're going to bring the young quarterback along, you need to have a running game for him. You need to have a receiver for him. If they traded away DeAndre Hopkins just because they knew the team was going nowhere, and you stick Levis out there with no offensive line and no receiver to throw to, you can get the kid killed. I mean, they got him killed anyways, but it would have been way worse if DeAndre Hopkins hadn't been out there. So I'm actually in favor of the idea. Now, the hypothetical about the Higgins for a second. Cincinnati has made it obvious. They want to trade. Like, they've made it obvious they want to trade Higgins. Higgins has twice requested a trade. Anytime somebody requests a trade and the team wants to trade somebody, if Cincinnati didn't want to trade Higgins, then they would be having contract discussions with Higgins, which Higgins has said they don't want to have. Anytime somebody requests a trade or anytime a team is shopping somebody, unless it's a quarterback, a first-round pick is almost always the starting point. A first-round pick in that year's draft. The second best thing after that is a second-round pick or a first-round pick in next year's draft. Nobody was going to trade a first-round pick for T. Higgins or L'Jarius Sneed. Nobody was going to trade a second-round pick for T. Higgins or L'Jarius Sneed. Nobody was going to trade a third-round pick in this year's draft for L'Jarius Sneed, but Kansas City decided, well, we just got to get rid of him, so let's take the deal. My guess is every team that thought about Higgins said, well, why do that when we can draft A.D. Mitchell in the second round? Why do that when we can draft Keon Coleman in the second round? We can draft Jalen Polk in the second round. And so they didn't make those trades. Well, now the next draft is the 25 draft. That would be the year that you'd have the Rams' second pick. I'd be shocked. I'd be floored if you called Cincinnati, offered the Rams' second-round pick next year, and they didn't take it for Higgins. Floored if they didn't do that. One texter says the Titans fans you're referring to are also the same Vols fans that bought brick by brick from Butch Jones. They are eating up all the feel-good offseason talk from relationship Ran. At the end of the year when the Titans are drafting top 5, Ran, and these Titans fans are back to winning the offseason championship. I mean, again, this isn't just Ran. You got to throw Brian Callahan in there. And you got to throw Chad Brinker. Callahan, to me, he's a rookie. He's a coach. So put him to the side. You know, Ran and Brinker, they probably should know better. 615-737-1025 here on our program if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. Coming up next, I got a press release from the Predators that I was really surprised by. And yet, I like it, but I think it could be done better. I'll explain what I mean by that. It's not the Predators I'm saying could do better, but it's just the subject of it. Tennessee's going to beat Evansville in this first game. They're up 11-5 with 2 outs in the top of the 8th inning. So Tennessee's going to win that in the Knoxville Super Regional. We'll keep you updated, though, if anything changes. Fireball Hot Take Friday, Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.